Okay, here's a math question for you. If you and your buddies form a company and you give your friends and family 8% to help you launch it, and then an angel takes 12% in a pre-seed round, then you do a seed round with a convertible note, how much equity does Uncle Bob have? If you're listening to this show, you probably need to raise money, and the last thing on your mind is your cap table. But trust me, you do not want to deal with an upset Uncle Bob in the middle of the round. That's why so many companies and investors use 212 to manage their cap tables. With 212's simple-to-use software, you always know exactly everyone on your cap table's position. If you're a founder or an investor, you owe it to yourself to check out 212's website at 212.co. That's TWO12.co. And get this, they're giving MJ Bulls listeners an additional 25% off your first year membership with discount code BULL, which brings it down to just $15 a month. Yeah, that's right, $15 a month. Go to 212.co, use code BULL, pay $15 a month, and never worry about a messy cap table screwing up your deal.
We need to put some blinders on here. My biggest concern, Dan, was this irrational exuberance, particularly in the retail investor market, of just rushing in and realizing that so many people, when they hear the word cannabis, they think of retail, they think of CBD, they think of cultivation, they think of brands. And that's great. Those are all things that are happening in a mature or developing economy. For us, we need venture returns. For us, we are healthcare investors and operators historically, so it was the perfect overlap.
From the PodConX studios, high in the Rockies at the beautiful Beaver Creek Resort, it's the Raising Cannabis Capital Show.
Today on MJ Bulls, we are continuing this year's Cannabis Investor Series, sponsored by 212, with the founder and CEO of Bonaventure Equity, the author of Cannabis Capital, the book, and the co-host of Cannabis Capital, the podcast, Ross O'Brien. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Always great to be here.
Well, for our listeners who haven't heard Cannabis Capital, the podcast, you start every episode with a really cool segment. And I thought, Russ, maybe you could explain to everybody what the cannabis economy challenge is and how it ties to your business.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Always great to be here on MJ Bulls. I've loved doing this over the years. The inspiration for Cannabis Capital podcast was to be an extension of the book, Cannabis Capital, and go into more of a long form conversation to help invite people into the virtual rooms and the boardrooms and some of the more detailed, more nuanced conversations that we're having around investing in cannabis. There's a concept that I identified in the book that we call the cannabis economy. And so what that is, Dan, for people that are new to it, we look at cannabis as a global macro economy, not a specific industry. And with any global macro economy, there are subsectors and sub-industries that develop therein. And we have a specific focus to invest in healthcare in the cannabis economy. So that puts us right in that emerging industry of healthcare impacted by cannabis. So it's our belief that cannabis has reached the boardroom of every company in every industry, period. And so we have a challenge, and anybody can take it at cannabiscapitalpodcast.com and submit something to Maggie and I, my co-host. And the idea is that we have yet to find an incumbent industry or vertical that has not already seen or will have to adapt or make adjustments and be informed by cannabis legalization, right? Everything from drug testing employees to religion. We talked about that on one of the podcasts. That it really reinforces that cannabis economy challenge.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it really forces you to think, which is the best part about it. Another thing you do on your podcast is you've interviewed a lot of your portfolio companies. And during these interviews, it's been clear to me that you have a solid rapport with these guys. And I think it has to do with the fact that you just don't provide capital. You also roll up your sleeves and provide guidance. Why is that so important?
Well, thanks for that question, Dan. I think it's a great question, and it's really germane to our DNA as a firm and what I believe are the fundamentals of investing in cannabis. So there's a great quote as one of the episodes of "Don't confuse a bull market with brains, or don't confuse brains with bull market, however you want to say it. It is clear to us that venture capital is a discipline, and it's a discipline that's developed over decades of experience in my case and with our firm. I actually just wrote a blog post on this at rossobrienvc.com, Ian, talking about what are those core fundamentals, and what they all speak to, Dan, is experience, and experience matters. And there's some research that I linked to on it that there are better outcomes with VC firms that have actual operational experience in their managing partner ranks.
Mhm.
And quite simply, we're investing in startup companies. We are operators ourselves. And I believe, because this is such a high risk, high reward investment strategy, you should be investing in something that you have an intimate knowledge and experience with, right? So if you're investing in startups, you should have been around the startup world for several cycles to kind of build that muscle memory. And so our firm is very much operationally minded. We know that from our own experiences, starting and managing early stage companies is hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And there's extremely high failure rates as a result of that. We've done a lot of experience in healthcare, so it's easily translatable to our investment thesis today. And because we are operators and having been on the other side of the equation, we have a lot of empathy for the entrepreneurs. We talk a lot about this concept of, you don't have money in the bank, but you got to make a payroll on a Friday. And we've experienced that, and a lot of our founders have experienced that, but it allows us to have more empathetic conversation and understanding about the challenges that are coming, because they are coming, right? With every small early stage company, there's always going to be challenges. So for us, it was never about just spray and pray and try to get some money out there and kind of rush into these transactions, but rather take the discipline of investing in early stage companies, translate it to this market that we believe in very strongly, and apply those fundamentals and best practices. And what that means for us is that the capital is one piece of the equation. It's a rapport, and it's building the right relationships with the founders. And that goes two ways. We bring ourselves to the equation as well. And we're not the right fit for everyone, but we're not supposed to be. For the entrepreneurs that we are a right fit for, we can build really great collaborative relationships. I've got a couple of the boards that I'm on now. We have an operations team that helps with back office support. We've just kind of been through it before, and we want to field a team that has some veteran experience that allows these entrepreneurs to do what they do best. And in our case, a lot of that is engineering new science, engineering new innovations, pioneering new chemistry. And if those management teams can do that better, stronger, faster, that's our job, right? And capital is only one part of that equation.
Man, I'm smiling because you said, not everybody's a good fit. And on one of your podcast episodes, you made it a point as an advice to entrepreneurs: do your homework, look up and find out what these investors invest in and what stages they invest in. And I was listening to the show, and I have to admit, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you put the cart in front of the horse. You don't always listen to everything. You're just moving. You mentioned already, you touched on it, that you focus on the healthcare sector or the biotech sector. Can you elaborate a little bit more so that less people make that mistake when they reach out to you?
Yeah, and look, it's on one hand just explaining like some of the things that we work through on a daily basis, but on the other hand, why did I write a book? Why are we doing a podcast? I mean, we're investors, right? Those things are nice to haves, not need to haves, right? The table stakes is understanding how to do venture. It's very important for us, though, because one of our core tenets as a firm is just continual learning, dynamic thinking. There's no destination. It's always improving. And because of that, we're very committed to putting this type of information out in service of the entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So what does that all mean as it relates to our investment thesis of healthcare, biotech, innovation, IP? I would summarize it very simply that when we looked at this space and applied our specific lens to successes we've had investing in early stage companies in other sectors, the one thing that stood out was that innovation in cannabis was largely being held back by a piece of legislation. So there was just one gating item to going and learning about this and doing the science. Imagine if like math was illegal for the last 100 years, and then all of a sudden you're like, great, we can go do math now, right? Like it's kind of how we thought about it. When we look at what all the potential is in this treasure trove of scientific innovation that's been locked up in this illegal plant for so long. It's hard for us to talk ourselves out of just being on the very tip of the iceberg of an absolutely transformative situation for delivering healthcare and patient outcomes in our communities and in our culture.
That's why you're in that sector. And when and so when somebody says, "Hey, I have this great idea," and you're like, "Yeah, but it's not in an area where we invest." You can't be something for everybody. And I give you guys a lot of credit because you found your spot and you're focused on it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, look, we've invested in businesses that fall out of that sort of early on. And our first fund is a lot of my money, the capital I put in the first fund. And we were really trying to find the types of entrepreneurs that we were interested in. And now the market developed in front of us in a way that allowed us to take the next step. And we even tighten up the aperture of our investment thesis. But for us, we had several conversations with our limited partners and other investors early on saying, look, we need to put some blinders on here. My biggest concern, Dan, was this irrational exuberance, particularly in the retail investor market, of just rushing in and realizing that so many people, when they hear the word cannabis, they think of retail, they think of CBD, they think of cultivation, they think of brands. And that's great. Those are all things that are happening in a mature or developing economy. For us, we need venture returns. For us, we are healthcare investors and operators historically, so it was the perfect overlap.
Do you want to grow your cannabis business? Are you curious about this booming new industry? Then you don't want to miss NCIA's 7th Annual Cannabis Business Summit and Expo, the industry's most influential national trade show. Join us December 15th through the 17th at the Moscone Center in San Francisco for the only cannabis industry event with over 125 top presenters, 80 plus business building educational sessions, and hundreds of exhibitors, all under one roof. Discover next year's best-selling cannabis brands and learn from the best in the business at hashtag CannabisSummit this December 15th through the 17th in San Francisco. Tickets at cannabisbusinesssummit.com. That's cannabisbusinesssummit.com. You must be 21 years of age. I understand that you're investing in your second fund. Where are you at this point?
Yeah, excited to share, Dan, that we just turned the corner on the first close of our second fund. So we're now investing out of Fund 2. We have our first investment we're concluding out of that portfolio. And we've launched the second fund with this more refined focus. And we will continue to raise additional capital. We're going to cap the fund at somewhere around 50 million and ideally be making $1 to $3 million Series Seed, Series A investments in the companies that fit this healthcare transformation that's happening as a result of cannabis legalization.
So there's still opportunity for people to invest. You haven't closed it yet.
No, the fund isn't closed. We've closed our first commitments and we're deploying capital. But yes, for accredited investors, we're always happy to talk to people that are looking for portfolio strategies to go invest in. Look, we're a great fit for people that understand that there is entrepreneurial upside in this space, that we are venture investors, and this is differentiated from a lot of the players out there. This is Series Seed, Series A, looking for massive valuation development in a 3 to 5 year time horizon, which fits our focus. And look, what we learned early on with our partners was this is not a space that's conducive to trying to just pick winners. And if somebody is looking to have exposure to the early stage of innovation in healthcare and cannabis, then we've got some great partners, and obviously our portfolio strategy is going to track to that.
Perfect. Well, we'll have links to Bonaventure Equity in the show notes. So if you're a company that's looking for growth funding in that sector, or you're an investor that wants Bonaventure to manage your cannabis investments, just click the links in the show notes or go to PodConX.com. Ross, before we go, maybe you could recommend a good book.
Obviously, Dan, you're teeing me up for my tagline, which did I tell you I wrote a book? Cannabis Capital. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where all good books are sold. Literally get to say for the first time in my life, no pride in authorship. I've had a lot of great conversations with people that have found me on social media and things that have had some feedback from reading the book. It seems to be doing well. So very excited.
It's good, and I'm glad you were able to do the show with us. Thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, Dan. I appreciate everything that you do.
Today's episode is brought to you by Santir, who's been crafting consumer products and tailored cannabinoids and terpenes for every issue like sleep, stress, focus, and pain. All their products are certified THC-free and use only natural ingredients that you can pronounce. Give their fast-acting, long-lasting, and outcome-based products a try. Go to santir.com and use product code PodConX, that's PODCONX, for 35% off your first order for you, your loved ones, or your pets.